Gets me every time.
Hey guys, Jay here. Jay's Never-Ending Project is not just a clever moniker. I think I mentioned in my intro video that I have quite a few other projects, and I'm going to walk you through one of the other ones. I have this 2014 Ural Patrol, two-wheel drive little Russian bike with a sidecar. I've done quite a bit of stuff to it. Added this LED driving light on the front, added the little bumper, which I probably need to pull off and do a little bit of straightening on. Windshield was cut down on the passenger side, used to be, I don't know, about 12-14 inches tall. I cut the plastic down to about 8 inches. The other thing I did was add a little bit of lighting in the sidecar. Along with this panel, got a voltage gauge, little 12-volt charger, USB chargers at 5 volts. So I've got the driving light switch that comes on, but this is a 2-position switch. You flip it down, got LED lighting down here. I need to go back and secure some of that wiring up. It looks like the little sticky clips came off. I don't believe those were 3M. But what I'm doing tonight, valve adjustments. This is one of those lovely vehicles that requires a valve adjustment at every oil change. And we're about due for an oil change. Right now, I'm at 5,700 kilometers, which I think works out to about roughly 4,000 miles. So this will probably be the third oil change that I've done on this. When I was researching these, a lot of people said, yeah, you might be purchasing a new bike, but it's a new 80-year-old bike. And they're not joking. When it comes to maintenance, it does have a ring and pinion style final drive instead of a chain. So at some point pretty soon, I'm going to need to pull the rear wheel off, re-grease the splines in there, the splines that the rear wheel sits on. But for tonight, we're going to stick with the valve adjustment. It's a pretty simple process. Not a whole lot's needed in the way of tools. You just need to pull the valve covers off. I think it's a 10mm to loosen the rocker adjustment, and then you need a feeler gauge to actually see that you're getting adjusted correctly. I'm going to walk through that pretty quick here, so stay tuned. Alright, so we're about to pull the head cover off. The main thing you want to be sure of when you're doing a valve adjustment on this is that the bike is cold. And not just cool to the touch. This bike has actually not been run in a couple of days. It's about as cold as it can get. So, once we pull this off, what we need to do, we'll use the Kickstarter right here to crank the engine over a little bit at a time. We'll find top dead center. Make sure there's no tension on the rocker arms at all. And then we'll use these feeler gauges. Let's see. Kind of see there, each one is marked. These are very thin. This is a 5/1000 feeler gauge. From what I've read, the optimum gap is going to be about 5/1000 of an inch. So that's what we're going to set these to. So first thing I've done, I've set an oil pan down here just so when I take this head cover off, or the rocker cover off, to expose the valves, or the rockers, valves, everything inside the head. There's going to be a little bit of oil contained in here. We just want to make sure that when we take this off, we don't just make a big mess. So we're using a 10mm, or excuse me, a 12mm wrench right now to remove the nut that retains the head. Yep, there's that oil. Alright, we'll go through with some paper towels and clean this up. Mainly just want to make sure we're not dripping any more oil than we absolutely have to keep from making much of a mess. Also want to make sure the gasket surface stays clean. Try not to get anything inside here. I do see a little bit of debris inside the head. I don't think you're gonna be able to see it with the lighting the way it is. So when I drain the oil, I'm going to pay extra close attention. It does look like there's a little bit of metallic debris, which this is still a fairly new engine. So I just need to make sure that there's not excessive metallic stuff in the oil, because that can signal a mechanical failure somewhere else. One thing these have been known to have happen is a lifter that will collapse. And that is one of the things that I'm a little nervous about. And part of the reason that I want to go ahead and check the clearances here. So, like I said, got everything exposed now. See if I can get you a little better view here. So, much like an American V8 engine, got push rods here, got your rocker arm that comes across here. So this is where the adjustment's going to be with this nut right here. Kind of see there, it adjusts the tension on the rocker arm. And these are both pretty loose. I can spin them by hand right here. So there's no tension on those right now. Let's see. The back side of the rocker here, you can see where it contacts the valve. Right in here, so we're going to take that be taking that measurement with the feeler gauge. So we've got the intake valve on this side, got the exhaust valve on this side. Alright, so let's get that set back up. Alright, so now that we have this valve cover off, really the first thing that we want to do is to make sure that our heads are properly torqued. Now, because this does have an aluminum casting and it is Russian, I suppose, not to mention being just a really old design, the head torque specified on these is only 30 to 35 foot-pounds. So what I'm going to do is start by just loosening these bolts. In a cross pattern. Alright, with those head bolts loose, now what we're going to do is take our torque wrench, set it to 35 pounds, then we'll go through and make sure it's torqued to the proper spec. The reason we need to do this is because how this head is torqued on here can affect the clearance on those rockers. Your push rods are of a fixed length running all the way back down to the base of the cylinder going into the block here. So 35. Alright, so our torque wrench is set. Tighten these in a cross pattern. A little loose. Here, our torque wrench is not clicked yet. We've not yet reached 35 pounds. After you've been wrenching on stuff a while, you can kind of get a feel for torque. Okay, so that's 35 pounds right there. So now we come back in the cross pattern. There's 35 pounds. There's 35 pounds. There's 35 pounds. Actually, it looks like my little torque calibration of my arm is pretty damn close. So, alright, so we've got the head retorqued. So now we're going to go back through. We've already rotated the engine, make sure we're at top dead center. Which I can go ahead and do again just to do it on video. Okay, so what you're going to see first, we're through the compression stroke, our exhaust valve. Our lighting is making this kind of difficult to see here. So crash guards putting weird shadows on here. So our exhaust valve just moved. So now we continue to rotate. So the piston should be at about the top. The exhaust stroke. We're coming back down. Our intake valve is opening here. That rocker move. So the piston is moving in. As it reaches the bottom of the stroke, our intake valve just closed. So now we should be back on the compression stroke. I don't know if that sound is coming through, but we're approaching top dead center as we build compression. Okay. Stood at play in both of our rockers here. Exhaust feels a little tight. Intake. Okay. We'll run this through another cycle here. So our intake valve is closed. And spin both of the push rods by hand, so there's no tension on there. Alright, our exhaust valve is right at 5 thousandths. Our feeler gauge is barely sliding in there with a decent bit of tension. So that one's about perfect. We're looking for about 4 to 6 thousandths clearance here. So we go to our intake. And now 5 thousandths doesn't quite fit. So it's a little tighter than 5 thousandths. So I'm going to pull out my 4 thousandths feeler here. Make sure it's all clean. And that 4 thousandths fits in there. Now the spec is between 4 and 6. We're right at 4, so I'm going to call that good. So now all we have to do, button everything back up. We should be ready to go. It's tight. Alright. So we've got our valve cover ready to go back on. Let's clean the oil off the gaskets here. Got a little bit of oil that was coming through as we rotated the crank. Alright, everything looks clean there. The gasket side of our cover is clean. Slip this back on. 13mm nut going on. This really just needs to be snug. Oops. I lied. That one's not 13mm. That one's 12mm. My arm calibration is telling me that that is torqued to about 15 foot-pounds, which should be sufficient. All this really does is seal against this gasket in here, and it's a pretty thick gasket. Got a bit of give to it, so that should be about good. So all that's left to do now, rotate the crank again, come over and do this side. This one's a little bit more challenging just because there's less room to work, so I'm not filming on this side. Excuse me, videoing on this side. But procedure is exactly the same. We'll put the pan underneath here, pull the nut off here. There's enough room for this cover to come off. Use the feeler gauge. Once the crank is rotated to the proper position, we'll use the feeler gauge to check. And then we should be done. So, hope that's been informative. It's not the most fun job, but it's obviously not terribly difficult either. Just about anybody can work on these things. It really is a very simple machine, as long as you're willing to accept and respect its limitations. So, I'll give a little bit more information on this bike later, maybe take the camera on a ride around. It's a fun bike. So, just trying to keep it in good condition. Anyway, catch y'all later. Alright, so that was the Ural valve adjustment. Went ahead and got through the other side. Other side was within spec as well. So it was really pretty uneventful, but just wanted to walk through that in case anybody had any questions on it. It's another one of those things that I just had trouble finding the information that I needed people were happy to type stuff out, but there were just very few videos on what was actually going on there. Anyway, if you found this helpful, give it a like. Love it if you comment, if you have anything constructive to say. Even if it's not constructive, I mean, give it a comment. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more on this. This bike is for sale currently. I'll probably have a little bit coming out on it in the near future. Just do a ride around, kind of another walk around of the bike, talk about it a little bit more, maybe a little bit of the history of this particular bike, which has been colorful as vehicles go. Anyway, catch you guys later.